In a quiet town, one decision will change everything. Strength, loss, and a secret that tests the meaning of courage. The story is just beginning, and nothing will stay the same. Watch closely, stay with us, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see what happens next. The morning sun slid slowly over the quiet town of Centerville, Colorado, spilling pale light across the empty streets and awakening the world with gentle warmth. The air smelled faintly of dew, and the faint echo of the Lincoln High School bell drifted through the town like a reminder that another ordinary day had begun. For most people, it was just Wednesday. For Amara Johnson, it was the heaviest morning in a long time. She moved through the crowded school hallway with her backpack clutched tightly to her chest, her steps quiet and uncertain. Her calm brown eyes looked ahead without focus, her dark skin standing out against the sea of unfamiliar faces. At 16, she carried a silence that few understood, a silence born not from shyness, but from loss. 6 months earlier, her father, Sergeant Marcus Johnson, had died while serving overseas. The people in Centerville didn't know that. To them, she was just the quiet new girl living with a foster family from another state, the kind of student who kept her head down and spoke only when she had to. In her first period history class, Amara took a seat by the window. The wooden chair squeaked slightly as she sat down and opened her notebook. Her handwriting was neat and deliberate, each word careful, as if order on the page might bring order to her thoughts. Around her, laughter and loud voices filled the room. Behind her, a group of boys joked and shouted, their laughter echoing off the walls. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing constantly at the edge of his lips. His name was Dylan Marsh. Everyone knew him. He had been the school's self-proclaimed king since freshman year, popular, confident, and bored enough to find trouble amusing. His power came not from respect, but from the fear of his jokes. When he noticed Amara sitting quietly by the window, something about her calmness seemed to challenge him. "Hey, new girl," he called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What's your name again?" "Amanda?" "Alicia?" His friends burst into laughter. Amara didn't look up. She stared straight at the chalkboard, though the teacher hadn't arrived yet. Dylan wasn't used to being ignored. He turned to his friend Tyler with a grin. "Guess she doesn't talk much. Maybe she's shy." He picked up a crumpled paper ball from his desk and tossed it toward her. It bounced off her notebook and rolled into her lap. More laughter. Amara's jaw tightened, but she didn't move. "Come on," Dylan said, standing halfway from his chair. "Don't be rude. Say something." His voice was teasing, but there was an edge underneath. The classroom fell a little quieter as people waited to see what would happen. Finally, Amara lifted her gaze and met his eyes for the first time. Her voice was soft but steady. "You should stop." He blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You should stop before you embarrass yourself," she said calmly, turning a page in her notebook. A few students gasped, trying not to laugh. Dylan froze, his grin faltering for the first time. His friends shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to losing control of a moment. "You think you're better than me?" he snapped. Amara didn't raise her voice. "No. I just think you don't know who you are without hurting people." The words landed harder than she intended. For a second, the boy just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then the classroom door opened, and the teacher walked in. Dylan muttered something under his breath and dropped back into his seat. The room filled with the sound of chalk on the board, but Amara could still feel his glare burning from behind her. She knew it wasn't over. When the bell rang for lunch, Amara packed her things quickly and slipped out before the others. The courtyard was bright with late autumn light. She found an old oak tree behind the gym and sat beneath it, the wind carrying a faint chill through the falling leaves. Her father's voice came back to her in memory, low and comforting. "Courage isn't loud, baby girl. It's quiet. It's what keeps you standing when everything else falls." She whispered those words to herself, feeling the weight of missing him settle again in her chest. The ache never truly left. After school, she walked home along a narrow street lined with white fences and maple trees. The foster house stood at the corner, small and tidy with a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Her foster parents were kind in a polite way, but they always felt distant, like people performing care rather than feeling it. She placed her backpack by the door, changed her shoes, and stepped outside again, sitting on the porch steps as the sun sank behind the trees. The evening smelled faintly of rain. She closed her eyes, imagining her father's laughter, the strength in his hands, the way he had promised she'd never be alone. The silence pressed around her, heavy and endless. Then she heard the sound of a car pulling up. Tires crunched against gravel. A door opened and closed. A tall man in his 50s approached, his steps measured and calm. His hair was silver, his jacket dark, his posture straight and sure. There was something quietly commanding about him, the kind of presence that came from years of discipline. Amara stood automatically. "Can I help you?" she asked. The man smiled gently. "You must be Amara." She nodded, wary. "My name's Cyan," he said. "I served with your father." Her breath caught. You knew him?" He nodded slowly. "More than knew him. He saved my life once, pulled me out when no one else could." His voice softened, heavy with memory. "He talked about you all the time. Said you were the strongest person he knew." Amara's throat tightened. "He did?" Cyan nodded. "He was proud of you. And before he died, he made me promise something to look out for you if anything ever happened." "You don't have to," she said quietly. "I'm fine." Cyan's expression didn't change. "I made a promise to a good man, and I keep my promises." The evening light dimmed around them. The crickets began to sing in the grass, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then he added gently, "Your father believed in peace through strength. I think that same strength is still in you, even if you can't see it right now." Amara wanted to argue, to tell him she wasn't strong at all, but something in his tone, firm yet kind, stopped her. "I don't know how to be strong anymore," she admitted in a whisper. Cyan smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you remembered." He turned toward his car but paused before getting in. "I'm staying at the Harmony Inn near the old dojo by the lake. If you ever want to talk or learn, come find me." Amara stood on the porch as his car disappeared into the dusk. The sound of the engine faded, leaving only the wind and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She didn't understand why, but for the first time in months, her chest didn't feel completely hollow. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and the fear, a small spark flickered back to life. The next morning began with the sound of rain tapping softly against the kitchen window. The gray light of dawn filtered through thin curtains, painting the small foster house in muted tones. Amara sat at the table, staring at a bowl of cereal she didn't want. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Her thoughts wandered to the man from last night, to his calm voice, and the way he'd spoken about her father. Something about Cyan felt familiar, as though a piece of her past had quietly returned. When a knock sounded at the door, she hesitated. Her foster mother appeared in the hallway, smiling politely. "There's someone here to see you," she said. Amara's pulse quickened. When she stepped into the living room, she saw him standing on the porch in a dark coat, rain glistening on his shoulders. "Good morning," Cyan said. "Mind if I come in?" He entered quietly, bringing with him the faint scent of rain and cedar. They sat at the kitchen table, the air between them calm but filled with unspoken things. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, he began. "Your father and I served together for 3 years. Afghanistan. He saved my life during a convoy ambush. I was trapped under a vehicle. He pulled me out." His eyes flickered with distant memory. "He was the bravest man I ever knew." Amara listened silently, her fingers tightening around her cup. "He never told me what happened," she said softly. "He didn't want you to worry," Cyan replied. "But he talked about you constantly. Said you had his stubbornness." A small smile touched her lips. "He used to say that to me, too." Cyan's expression softened. "He taught me something I never forgot. That strength isn't about winning fights. It's about staying true, even when you're scared." His gaze lingered on her, steady and kind. "You remind me of him. But you're holding everything in, trying to be strong until it breaks." The words hit too close. Amara looked away, blinking hard. "I don't need anyone's help," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Maybe not. But your father once told me that real courage is learning to accept guidance when you need it." He rose from his chair, his tone gentle. "There's an old dojo near the lake. I've been restoring it. It's called Harmony Hall. Your father trained there once. If you ever want to come by, I'll be there." He left her with that thought, stepping back into the rain. All day his words stayed with her. The halls of Lincoln High felt louder than ever, the laughter and chatter grating against her quiet thoughts. Students still whispered as she passed, some curious, others dismissive. When Dylan's mocking grin met her eyes from across the corridor, she didn't flinch. Something inside her had begun to shift, though she couldn't explain how. After school, without deciding, she found her feet leading her beyond the main road, past the small coffee shop and the library, toward the lake. The rain had stopped, and the world smelled clean, washed of noise. At the end of a narrow dirt path stood the dojo Cyan had mentioned, Harmony Hall. The wooden building was old, but carefully kept, its sign simple, the name carved into the beam above the entrance. Amara stood before it for a long moment, unsure whether to knock. Before she could move, the door slid open. Cyan appeared, as if he had known she would come. "You found it," he said. "Come in." She stepped inside. The scent of sandalwood and polished wood filled the air. The floor gleamed under soft light, filtering through paper-paneled windows. The space was silent, peaceful, alive with stillness. "Take off your shoes," Cyan said. She obeyed. He handed her a neatly folded white uniform. "This was your father's first GI. I think it's time someone wore it again." The fabric felt strange in her hands, light but meaningful. She changed and stood barefoot on the smooth wooden floor. The moment her feet touched the mat, something inside her steadied. Cyan began the lesson with no small talk. "First we breathe," he said. "Deep, slow, from the center. The breath controls the mind, and the mind controls the body." His voice was calm, rhythmic, grounding. Amara followed his instructions, awkward at first, but his patience guided her. "Don't fight the movement," he said. "Let it happen. Let the ground hold you." They moved through simple stances, balance, pivot, redirection. "You're not fighting an enemy," he told her. "You're facing your fear." At first she stumbled, too tense, too cautious. But Cyan never raised his voice, never scolded. His corrections were quiet, precise, and always encouraging. Time slipped away until she realized her breathing had fallen into rhythm with her movements. When he finally called for a pause, her muscles trembled, and sweat glistened on her forehead. She sank to the mat, catching her breath, surprised at the calm filling her chest. "It's harder than it looks," she said. Everything worth learning is, Cyan replied. But you didn't quit. He poured her a cup of green tea from a small pot in the corner. Your father drank this after every session. He said it reminded him that peace comes after effort. They sat in silence, sipping tea, the air still and warm. Through the windows, the last light of the day glowed gold. When Amara finally rose to leave, she paused by the door. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked quietly. Cyan turned toward her, his face calm, but his voice deep with sincerity. "Because your father once saved my life," he said. "Now it's my turn to help save his daughter's spirit." Amara didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight, her heart full, in a way it hadn't been for months. When she stepped outside, the evening air was cool and sweet. For the first time since her father's death, she didn't feel completely alone. The sound of the lake rippling beyond the trees seemed to echo the rhythm of her steady breath. As she walked home under the pale sky, she realized she was carrying something new inside her. Not strength, not yet, but the beginning of peace. Days passed, and the rhythm of Amara's life began to change. Each afternoon after school, she walked to Harmony Hall, her steps lighter than before. Inside the quiet dojo, Cyan was always there waiting for her, calm and patient as the air itself. Under his guidance, she learned more than movements. She learned to breathe with purpose, to let her thoughts settle instead of chase each other in endless circles. Every motion demanded balance, not force, and every mistake was met not with judgment, but with silence. Slowly, she began to carry that stillness into her daily life. At school, she no longer avoided eye contact. When someone whispered behind her back, she didn't flinch. When a teacher called on her in class, her voice didn't shake. The other students noticed. The quiet new girl no longer looked small or uncertain. She seemed grounded, untouchable in her calm. But not everyone liked the change. Dylan noticed it most of all. He couldn't explain why it bothered him, only that it did. The same girl who once ignored him now walked past with her head high, unaffected by his presence. Her silence, which he had once mocked, now seemed to hold something he didn't understand. His friends teased him about the cafeteria incident, about how the new girl had made him look foolish, and though he laughed it off, their words stung. He told himself he didn't care, yet every time he saw her, something twisted in his chest. Anger, maybe, or shame. By Friday, the tension reached a breaking point. The cafeteria buzzed with noise, trays clattering, laughter echoing across the room. Amara sat at a back table, reading quietly. Dylan spotted her from across the room. A smirk spread across his face, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Watch this," he muttered to his friends, rising from his seat. He strode toward her and snatched the book from her hands. "Still hiding behind your little stories?" he said mockingly. The laughter around them grew. Amara stood up, her gaze steady. "Give it back," she said. "Come take it," he challenged. For a moment she hesitated, the eyes of the cafeteria pressing on her. Then she stepped forward, her voice calm. "You should stop this." The air seemed to tighten. Dylan's grin hardened. "Or what? You'll hit me?" He shoved her shoulder roughly, expecting her to fall. But she didn't. She moved with the push, pivoting lightly the way Cyan had taught her, using his force instead of fighting it. Dylan stumbled forward, losing balance, his tray crashing to the floor. Gasps and laughter erupted around them, his face flushed crimson. Amara bent down, picked up her book, and said quietly, "You don't scare me anymore." Then she walked away, leaving him frozen in the noise and humiliation. By the end of the day, the story had spread through the entire school. Some called her brave, others reckless. Dylan avoided everyone's eyes, anger and embarrassment churning inside him. When the final bell rang, Amara went straight to the dojo. Cyan was sweeping the floor when she arrived, her movements hurried and uncertain. "I did something today," she said. He set the broom aside. "What kind of something?" She told him everything, the confrontation, the shove, how she'd reacted without thinking. When she finished, she looked down, waiting for disappointment. But Cyan only nodded slowly. "You didn't attack him," he said. "You protected your balance. There's a difference." "But everyone says I embarrassed him," she murmured. "That's their problem," Cyan replied. "You didn't seek revenge. You simply refused to be hurt again. That's not shameful. That's growth." His calm words lifted something heavy from her chest, though deep down she knew it wasn't over. Dylan wouldn't let it end that way. 2 days later, she was called into the principal's office. When she entered, Dylan was already there, slouched in his chair, jaw tight. The principal's voice was firm but measured. "I've heard 2 different stories about what happened," he said. "Miss Johnson, Mr. Marsh, this ends today." Cyan was there too, seated quietly in the corner, his presence steady as stone. "If I may," he said, his tone calm and respectful. "I've been working with Amara outside of school. What happened wasn't aggression. It was defense. I'd be happy to demonstrate if needed." The principal hesitated. Cyan continued. "In my years of teaching, I've learned that young people act out of what they don't understand. Fear, pride, pain. Punishing them fixes nothing. Teaching them does." The principal leaned back, thinking. "So what do you suggest?" Cyan met his gaze evenly. "A program. Peace through balance. Weekly classes on respect, self-control, and understanding. Anyone who wishes to join may. But these 2 should lead by example." The room was silent for a long moment before the principal sighed. "It's unconventional," he admitted. "But we'll try it. Both of you will attend." Dylan groaned but said nothing when Cyan's calm eyes turned to him. Outside the office, Amara glanced at Cyan. "You really think he'll come?" she asked quietly. "He will," Cyan said. "He's angry. But anger always hides something deeper. The dojo has a way of uncovering it." That night, Amara lay awake, listening to the rain outside her window. She didn't regret what she'd done, but she couldn't stop thinking about the look on Dylan's face when he fell. The shock, the humiliation. For the first time, she felt a flicker of pity. She wondered what kind of pain made someone act like he did. The next afternoon at Harmony Hall, the door creaked open during her practice. Amara turned, expecting Cyan, but froze. Dylan stood in the doorway, hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders tense. Their eyes met in silence. Cyan appeared behind her, calm as ever. "You came," he said. Dylan shrugged. "Principal said I had to." Cyan's lips curved slightly. "Sometimes obligation is the first step toward change. Come in." Amara stepped aside as Dylan entered, the air shifting subtly between them. The faint scent of sandalwood filled the room, the same peaceful silence that had always comforted her, now holding something new, a fragile possibility of understanding. For the first time since they'd met, Dylan said nothing cruel. For the first time, Amara wasn't afraid. Something new had begun. The afternoon light streamed softly through the tall paper windows of Harmony Hall, painting the polished wooden floor in gentle shades of gold. The dojo was quiet except for the sound of measured breathing and the soft shuffle of bare feet. Cyan stood at the front with his hands clasped behind his back, his calm gaze watching as the students moved in unison. Among them were Amara and Dylan, standing on opposite sides of the room, their movements balanced and controlled. The new Peace Through Balance program had brought more students from Lincoln High. Curious faces, drawn by whispers of change. Cyan's voice carried through the space, calm and steady. "This place is not for fighting," he said. "It's for understanding, Every movement you make reflects what's inside you. If you move with anger, it shows. If you move with peace, it shows more. His eyes rested briefly on Dylan, who bowed awkwardly with the others, before returning to his stance. The class began with breathing exercises, then slow, deliberate movements that demanded patience. Dylan struggled at first, his balance uneven, his body tense. Each time frustration crept in, Cyan approached quietly. "You're fighting yourself, not me," he would say. "Relax. You can't control what you fear until you face it." Gradually, Dylan's rhythm began to steady. His steps found their flow. When Cyan dismissed the class for a short break, most students left to drink water or talk in small groups. But Dylan remained on the mat, clenching his fists. Amara watched him for a moment before walking over. "You don't have to try so hard," she said softly. "Easy for you to say," he muttered. "You've been doing this for weeks." Her expression stayed calm. "You don't get better by hating it." He looked away, his voice low. "You think you know me? You think this fixes everything?" Amara met his gaze. "No, but maybe it stops you from breaking more." The words settled between them in quiet understanding. When Cyan called the class back, Dylan stood beside her without another word. Cyan guided them through a new lesson on redirection. "When someone pushes you," he explained, "don't push back. Use their energy. Let it go where it wants." He motioned for Dylan to push him. Dylan hesitated, then shoved forward. Cyan barely moved, his body turning smoothly, his arm guiding Dylan's weight past him until the boy stumbled harmlessly forward. "It's not strength," Cyan said. "It's balance. Try again." They repeated the movement, again and again, each time smoother than the last. Then Cyan gestured for Amara to take his place. She faced Dylan, meeting his eyes. "Go easy," she said quietly. He nodded. When he pushed, she pivoted lightly, redirecting him as Cyan had taught her. They practiced until their breathing matched, calm and even. For the first time, Dylan wasn't fighting to win. He was learning to let go. After the session, when the others left, Cyan called Dylan aside. "You have potential," he said. Dylan frowned. "You don't know me." Cyan's voice stayed soft. "I know anger. I've seen it in good men. You carry it because you think it keeps you safe. But it's only hiding your pain." Dylan's expression wavered, the wall around him cracking. "You don't know what it's like to feel like nothing," he said quietly. "I do," Cyan replied. "But anger won't fill that emptiness. It will only make it louder." Dylan's eyes dropped to the floor, his voice barely audible. "I messed up. I hurt people." "Then stop hurting," Cyan said gently. "Start learning." Dylan nodded, and for the first time he believed he could. When he left that night, he bowed clumsily before stepping outside into the cool air. Cyan watched him go with quiet pride, then turned toward a framed photograph on the wall. Marcus Johnson, smiling in uniform. "You were right, my friend," he whispered. "Teaching peace is harder than teaching war, but it's worth it." Weeks passed, and the dojo became a second home for both Amara and Dylan. He arrived early, stayed late, and began helping younger students tie their belts or correct their stance. His old arrogance faded, replaced by a quiet confidence. Amara noticed his patience, his focus, the way his eyes no longer burned with anger, but with understanding. Together they trained, side by side, no longer teacher and bully, but equals in growth. One afternoon, after a long session, Dylan sat on the mat, catching his breath. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Amara asked. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, like I'm not fighting myself anymore." "That's kind of the point," she said. He looked at her, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I'm sorry. For everything." Amara nodded, I know. Cyan watched from across the room, the faintest smile on his face. The shift he had hoped for had come to life before his eyes. Spring arrived quietly in Centerville, bringing longer days and softer skies. At Lincoln High, the air buzzed with energy as summer neared, but the tension that once filled the halls was gone. Fewer fights, quieter laughter, calmer faces. Harmony Hall had become something more than a dojo. It was a refuge. Every morning before school, Amara trained in the silence of dawn, and every evening she helped Cyan instruct the younger students. Dylan was there almost every day, teaching beginners, his once proud tone replaced with patient encouragement. The boy who had once led through fear, now inspired through kindness. The same students who used to laugh at him now listened to him. When he spoke, they heard respect. One afternoon, Cyan watched as Dylan led a group through a sequence of movements. "He's learning faster than I expected," Cyan said quietly. Amara smiled. "You taught him more than balance. You taught him how to forgive himself." Cyan nodded slowly. No one finds peace until they stop fighting the person in the mirror. When the lesson ended, Dylan approached and bowed. "Thank you," he said. Cyan raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." Cyan's voice was warm. "You did the hard part yourself. I only showed you the door." Amara stood beside them, her heart full. The world felt wider, brighter than before. That evening, as the sun lowered behind the hills, Cyan closed the dojo, and Amara helped him gather the mats. "Do you ever think about my father?" she asked quietly. Cyan looked toward the fading light. "Every day. He taught me that saving a life doesn't always mean pulling someone from danger. Sometimes it means guiding them out of the darkness inside. That's what he did for me, and what you're doing for others now." Amara smiled through the sting in her eyes. "I wish he could see all this." "He can," Cyan said. "Men like your father never truly leave. They live through the peace they helped create." The next morning, the dojo was alive with energy. A new class of students gathered for the program's first official session. Amara and Dylan stood at the front, ready to teach, while Cyan observed from the side. "Remember," he told them quietly, "teach them what you've learned. Not how to fight, but how to stay calm when the world pushes too hard." They nodded. When the doors opened, the younger students entered nervously. Amara greeted them with a calm voice. "Welcome to Harmony Hall. Here, we don't fight each other. We learn how not to." Dylan demonstrated the first movements, patient and steady, his voice gentle, as he helped a boy who had stumbled. Cyan watched from the shadows, pride warming his eyes. They had become what he and Marcus once dreamed of, peaceful strength carried forward. As the sun set that day, Amara remained in the center of the dojo, moving slowly through her forms, her breathing steady, her body flowing like water. When she finished, she bowed deeply. Cyan stepped out from the corner, smiling. "You move like your father," he said. "No," Amara replied, returning his smile. "I move like me." He chuckled softly. "Even better." They stood together, watching the last light fade through the windows. "You think we've changed things?" she asked. "A few hearts, maybe," he said. "That's enough. Change doesn't start with the world. It starts with one person choosing peace." She nodded, feeling the truth of it settle deep within her. Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and rain as twilight fell over Centerville. The plaque on the wall caught the last glimmer of sunlight. It read, "Strength is not power over others. It's peace within yourself." And for the first time in a long while, Amara, Dylan, and Cyan all felt the same, quiet certainty that peace, once found, can spread far beyond the walls that protect it. Every ending hides a new beginning. What would you choose? Anger or peace? If this story moved you, show your support. Like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from.